Welcome to Myanmar Musings, a podcast of the Myanmar Research Centre at the Australian National University, Canberra. I'm Luke Corbin. Today it's September 23rd, 2020, and we're doing something a little bit different. Earlier today, a seminar was held by the Swedish Burma Committee on the prospects for ethnic minority representation in Burma's 2020 election. This podcast comes to you in cooperation with the Swedish Burma Committee and is a recording of today's seminar. The panelists were Ying Lao, Deputy Director at the Salween Institute, and Kyaw, Executive Director at PACE Myanmar, the People's Alliance for Credible Elections, who've been in the media a little bit recently. The panel was moderated by Alexander Jäätmaa of the Swedish Burma Committee. The talk goes for around 50 minutes and finishes with a few questions from the audience. One further note is that this was an online seminar, so you'll find that the audio quality varies based on who's speaking. On the whole, the internet connections were pretty average, but I think you'll find that if you're using earphones, it should sound quite clear. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Alexander.
Good morning, Europe. Good afternoon, Myanmar. And good evening, Australia. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alexander Jäätmaa. I work for the Swedish Burma Committee, which is an independent organization based here in Stockholm, supporting civil society groups in Burma. We also work to monitor developments and spread knowledge about developments in the country. And today's seminar is part of an effort to shed more light on the upcoming elections this autumn. So Burma is a diverse country where people belonging to different ethnic minority groups make up about a third of the population. Armed conflicts between the central government, which was long under direct military control, and different ethnic minority groups have haunted the country since independence. And that one of the main points of contention has been the right to increased self-determination and political influence in ethnic minority areas. And over the course of the last century, under military rule, the country came to be increasingly centralized as political, economic, and military power became concentrated among ethnic majority group, Burma. Now that the country has taken steps towards increased democratic rule, self-determination and increased influence remain among the key political issues debated. And indeed, armed conflicts continue in several parts of the country, even as we speak. Serious human rights violations have been documented, and even crimes against humanity have been widely documented. This year, there will be parliamentary elections in Burma at union level and state region level. The democratic transition has opened up new opportunities for political representation for ethnic minorities, but ethnic political parties have not been very successful in gaining formal representation. There are more than 90 political parties registered, and around 2/3 of them can be classified as ethnic political parties. But despite this, ethnic political parties hardly got any seats at union level in the last election. The National League for Democracy, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, won by a landslide, obtaining a majority of their own. And only 2 ethnic political parties gained a significant number of seats at the union level, namely the Arakan National Party, the ANP, and the Shan Nationalities League for Democracy, the SNLD. But this time it's different, as they say, right? So with the last election largely being framed as a binary choice between continued military rule and a democratic alternative, the 2020 elections take place under an NLD-led government. An NLD government which promised increased ethnic influence and federalism, but has failed entirely to deliver on those promises. And this has led to disappointment, not least among ethnic minority voters. So this year's elections will in a way be a test to see how voters in ethnic minority areas see themselves best represented by continuing to vote for the NLD or by voting for ethnic political parties or other alternatives. So with that said, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished panelists joining us from Yangon. We have Ying Lao from Salween Institute for Public Policy, which is a research institute that has conducted research on ethnic political parties in Burma. We are also joined today by Kosai from PACE Myanmar, People's Alliance for Credible Elections, which is the largest domestic election observer in Burma. And I would like to extend or direct my first question to you, Ying Lao. It is perhaps a bit of a basic question, but I feel it's sometimes overlooked. And that is, who are the ethnic political parties? Is it fair to say, as I hinted in the introduction, that they tend to focus or work for self-determination? Are there sort of common traits like that, or is it too big a group to make such generalizations? So who are the ethnic parties and what role do they play in Burmese politics?
Thank you. Thank you very much for organizing this interesting event. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the ethnic political parties. Thank you everyone for joining us here today. I will start with just very basic facts. We have approximately 100 political parties nationwide, and two-thirds of them are ethnic-based political parties. So approximately 60 political parties. Almost all of the political parties fall under two umbrella groups. One would be UNA, United Nationality Alliance, and another one is National Brotherhood Federations. So there are these two major umbrella. Many of the political parties are members of these two umbrellas group. Now, UNA, I will begin with UNA, United Nationalities Alliance. These are the parties that were competed in the 1990 election. Many of them were established in 1988, 1989, and they competed in 1990 elections. Currently, there are 15 members of the political parties. And for the National Brotherhood Federations, these are the political parties that competed in the 2010 elections, and they claim to have 22 members. I said they claim to have 22 members. There's a reason for that, because some of the parties that used to be member of NBF right now have merged into different parties. So it is not clear whether their membership still remain intact, or if they choose to lean toward an UNA, or they remain, outside of this two umbrella group. It is not very clear. Generally, the members of National Brotherhood Federations are perceived to be in allegiance with the USDP, the military-backed party. And the reason why this is the case is because some of the party's leaders have got appointed as state ministers under U Thein Sein government, the previous government. And recently, a few of them have declared divorce from USDP. And if you look at this, you wouldn't really need to divorce from somebody unless you have been married to that person, right? So these are some of the reasons why they have been perceived as allegiance to the USDP. Now, what are the difference? Policy-wise, they are slightly different. For the UNA, United Nationalities Alliance, they advocate for 8 states policy. That means all the Kachin, Kyaw, Kayin, Chemo, Rakhine, Shan, and Burma states within the Federal Union. However, for the NBF, they stick to this current structure, the 7 states and 7 regions. Both of them claim to advocate for genuine Federal Union that guarantees self-determination and ethnic equality. Now, but one said 8-state policy, and another one said 7-state and 7 regions policy. This is a very clear difference between these two umbrella groups. Now, whether they really work for self-determination, that depends on their understanding on definition of self-determination, such as whether this is a holding together or coming together Federal Union, whether member state of the unions are sovereign, whether the exercise of power derived from the constitutions through division of powers or distribution of competences, or decentralization where all powers lie with the union and the union can choose to or not to share its power to the member states. Another point in case is whether member state of the unions have government institutions or entities or mechanisms to exercise any of the power distributed to them one way or the other. Fundamentally, whether the EPPs, the ethnic political parties, believe in their home state as being sovereign and has the natural rights to exercise the power, or whether they believe those powers should be given to them by the union or the winning party or the military. So this is the how we distinguish between these two sides. And the role of ethnic political parties in Burmese politics is significant for many reasons. But I'll discuss based on three principles: the democratic principles, principles of equality and self-determination, and political stability is as a key for democracy to take root in the country. Representation is very important. We know for a fact, we know that it is against democratic principle to have inadequate gender representation. We know that it is against democratic principles to have inadequate religious representation. And I believe it is against democratic principles to have inadequate ethnic representations. So some ethnic parties claim they represent everyone regardless of gender, age, or ethnicity. But it may be so, at least in terms of their desire to gain supports and votes from all people. But if you observe them and examine them carefully, if all the leadership of those parties and their decision-making bodies are dominated by one gender or one ethnic group, can we truly claim that all voices are heard and all perspectives are considered? I think that this is based on the democratic principle. In terms of the principle of equality and self-determination, based on the 70 years of experience, major parties, national parties have been unwilling, unable, or incapable of representing the non-majority or non-Burma ethnic group whose interest cannot be fulfilled by only democracy. Their interest will be fulfilled only if there is both democratic political system under the federal form of state that guarantees rights to self-determination of all member states of the union. My final point is that political stability is key for democracy to take root in the country. Only federal system will be able to bring the level of political stability that will allow democracy to survive. With the right approach, there is even a chance for democracy to thrive in this country. Based on these three principles, the role of ethnic parties in Burmese politics is very significant.
Thank you, Ying Lao. Thanks a lot for that exposition. So could I turn to you now, Kosai, because I have a question relating to this year's election, which is, there is an expectation that ethnic political parties will perform better this election compared to the previous one. At least that's an idea I get. And in the latest PACE report that you published on political preferences, you pointed out that this election is likely to be more competitive than previous ones. So I was wondering, could you expand a bit on this?
Sure. Thanks, Alexander, and thanks to Swedish Burma inviting me to this panel. As you just mentioned in the beginning, in 2015 election was like majority of the people, the citizens, even the majority of the political party are just focusing on to change the government. So that is the ultimate goal back in 2015. But I mean, like when you look at it to the 2020, the situation is becoming much more complex and they're much more different. So as you just mentioned earlier, I mean, like, there are a lot of reasons why this is happening. So you can see that there are a lot of political parties, especially in ethnic party, based in the states, are merging into one, like especially in the Kachins. In Kachin alone, there are 3 parties becoming one party. And then there are Mon party in one state, 2 Mon party becoming in one party. So it's meaning that they started to realize that they have to get their own seat at least in their state. So this is kind of becoming a predominant aspirations among the non-Burma ethnic political party. That is one of the factors why 2020 elections will be much more competitive than back in 2015. But the challenge for the ethnic party is that when we look at it, the general public perception regarding the performance of the government, whenever we ask the questions to rate the performance of the government, so the citizen or the people from the state are much more pessimistic and they're much more skeptical than the people from the region. That is consistent, started from 2017, 2019, and until now, I mean, and the last month, the finding in our survey. So that is kind of or something like that. The people from the states are already disappointed a bit about the central governments. That's obvious. But it doesn't, I am not sure that it will translate into the vote, because it's always different between these satisfactions and then at the vote on election day. And then when you look at the by-elections back in 2017 and 2018, whenever the voter turnout low, the votes always go to the bigger party. Like in 2018 by-elections, the turnout in Myint, Kachin State, is just only less than 40%. And then, the majority of the votes go to the major party. And then in 2017 by-elections, the turnout in the by-election is just like just only 37%. And then it just go to the other majority party in one state. So the turnout is one of the key issues for the ethnic party, because in 2019, we asked the questions how likely they are going to vote in the upcoming elections. It was much in 2019. So we asked the citizens to give a rating from 1 to 5. Because when we asking this kind of questions, yes or no questions, because of the social desirability, people tend to say yes. So we asked them to give a rating from 1 to 5. 1 is they definitely not vote, and then 5 is they will definitely vote. So the 5s always reflect the actual turnout. So in 2019 alone, we have only got 45% say they will definitely vote, who indicate 5. And then last month, when we asked the same questions, we got only 45% nationwide. We got only 45% respondent 5. So they will definitely vote. So when it's come to the state and region disaggregation, so the regions, they still have 45% indicating 5. But in states, it's just only 31%. Just only 31% indicated they were definitely vote. So I think it is really, really important for the ethnic party based in the ethnic states if they want to fulfill their expectation. But the problem or the challenge for not only the ethnic party but also the other major party in the region is that because of the COVID restriction, travel restrictions, and then public gathering restriction, it is really, really difficult for the candidate to go out and reaching out to the electorate, especially in Rakhine State. Rakhine, we have 7 townships. Internet has been totally shut down. The restriction in Rakhine are much more strict than the other states in the region. So I'm not sure how those parties is going out, will be able to going out and to go and vote. And then to conclude my first take, one of the followers' questions regarding the intention to vote is like, what is the major challenge for them to be able to get out and vote? So majority of the citizens said COVID-19 and health concern. So it was back in August. So the second wave didn't hit the country. Now we are in the middle of the second wave. So I'm not sure if the spike is going this way. I'm not sure whether the people will go out and vote. And then definitely the citizens in the states, I'm not sure whether they will go out and vote. So it is very competitive in the states than in 2015, but there are a lot of challenges for the ethnic parties. And then when you look at it, the major party in the ethnic states in 2015, USDP and NLDs are the main major party. Now we are 4 main major party: NLD, USDP, United Democratic Parties, and the Union Betterment Party, who just are led by the former the Speaker of the House, Swar. So 4 major big parties competing every state and region. There are a lot of challenges for the ethnic party too. Even though it is very competitive. So let's see the results on election day. If the election commissions will be able to keep their schedule on time.
Yeah, thanks a lot. For those, we have quite a lot of people joining us today, so maybe I could just briefly explain 1 or 2 concepts that came up. And one is the state versus region. And what we mean by that, of course, is these 14 administrative divisions that are divided into 7 regions where the majority population, the Burma, are in majority. And these 7 ethnic states where based on the majority, the ethnic minority population, who are the largest group in that state. It's very interesting what you say, I think, about this. There seems to be increased enthusiasm for this election, but at the same time, you mentioned the fact that voter turnout might in fact be quite low. And of course, the signals we have heard from the Union Election Commission so far is that the election will go ahead as planned. That's what they've communicated so far. There might be a different decision come October, we'll see, but that is the signal so far. So of course that, and as you say, I mean, they might also not have an incentive to do it then, because a low turnout, as you say, might benefit the larger parties. I think that's an interesting aspect to keep in mind. But maybe I can have a bit of a follow-up question. I mean, you've talked about the challenges, but there are, of course, a lot of challenges we haven't mentioned relating to the system itself. The fact, of course, that these elections are only for 75% of the seats in parliament, 25% are directly appointed by the military. The Rohingya are not allowed to participate. They don't have the vote. Voting is also likely to be cancelled in several conflict-affected areas. These areas tend to be in ethnic minority areas. So could I just ask you maybe, I mean, are there challenges relating to this system that are sort of specific for the ethnic political parties?
I mean, one of the challenges for the ethnic parties themselves is majority of the ethnic parties are much more on the identity-based ethnic party. So this is also one of the kind of like a challenge from within the party themselves. When we ask the questions in like what kind of candidates when they are considering to vote the candidate, so we ask different types of candidate. So one of the candidate we ask is like how likely are you going to vote if the ethnicity of the candidate is different from your? Just only 30% of the citizen overall, they said that they won't vote the candidate which different from the ethnicity from them. And then the states, in the states, it is also the same response. Like 1/3 of the citizens said they won't vote if the candidate is different from their ethnicity. So I mean, it's and then we have like 50% of the people, they just say don't know. So like there are a big chunk of people who couldn't decide it if they got the candidate which is different from their ethnicity. This is kind of, it's not only the challenge for the Burma party, it is also for every party, which is based on the ethnicity. So I mean, like Kachin, Shan may not vote for Kachin may not vote for Korean or something like this. It's like very interesting point of view for the voter. But in terms of the system, so we got like, first of all, like we definitely 25% of the military representative in the parliament is like kind of a huge flaw in our democratic system. Because of this 25%, I mean, when we are talking about the electoral system, so the people tend to keep the current system we are using first for the majority system, because they think that the military have already got 25%. If military alliance or back party USDP got about 20 or 21% or 25%, they will be able to form the government. So if you're changing the proportionate, the current majority system to the proportionate system, the USDP will got advantages. That is kind of the popular narrative among the political party. That's why we couldn't discuss this kind of thing. But for me, besides from this 25%, definitely we have to go through this 25% at the end of the day. But looking at the share of the vote, in 2015, the current government just shared 51% of the popular vote nationwide. Definitely, we have to go through some of the constituency sites or something like that. But generally, if we got the proportionate system, there will be more advantages for the ethnic minority party. I mean, at least at their states and regions. So I mean, first of all, we have to review our current electoral system. But I'm not saying that whether we should go jump to proportionate system or not, because we need a lot of voter education, we need a lot of system set up infrastructurally. That is kind of the major fundamental issue we have to deal with. So one of the key issues, there are a lot of issues, just one of the issues I have to highlight is that the current legal framework. So the legal framework started back in 2008. If the legal framework is not designed to control the result, but it is definitely designed to control the process. So the election commissions has been appointed by the president. So definitely the accountability of the union election commissions go to the president instead of the other political institution. So it is much more difficult to see the election commissions as a neutral body. That's why we got this issue back in 2015, and then we got the same issue right now. this is kind of the fundamental issue in the system. But I mean, there are also a lot of the procedures and the regulations within the system. But I mean, I will stop here because there are a lot of issues. So we can discuss more, and I am happy to take the questions and clarification.
Yeah, thanks a lot. There's plenty of challenges. I also have plenty of questions. So let's try to move on. I have one question for Ying Lao, because going back a bit to the role of political parties, I mean, because despite all these challenges, we have had, the AMP and the SNLD. I mean, they are the two big ethnic parties at union level. And my question is, these parties have actually had representation in the national parliament over these past years. Have they been able to play a role? Have they been able to exert any influence?
Thank you. Honestly, not much. But then this answer doesn't only apply to these two political parties. Not getting much done apply to NLD as well. At least not much constructive change. Destructive, well, since we have limited time, I will not touch on those. But I think just to touch on a few key issues, for example, because I said something about Rakhine and the internet blackout, and then internet shutdown, and we have a stalled peace process, continuing fighting, growing numbers of IDPs, tension with all other ethnic political parties that used to be alliance with NLD, all this issue with Aung San statute and the naming of bridges with Aung San name, despite the protests of the local community, ban on ethnic media, restricting the media, arresting students, the list go on and on. So when it's come to making any impact at all, I don't think much has been done in the previous, in the past 5 years. But that is not just applied to the two ethnic parties. The winning party, the majority party, NLD, didn't accomplish much either, constructively speaking. But that's not because that's not how would you say, not from the lack of trying. The whole political structure is stacked against ethnic parties. Here's an example of SNLD and ANP, Rakhine State and Shan State. Even if ethnic parties won 100% of the seats in the state parliament under the 2008 constitution, still will not get to choose their own chief minister. That's the first problem, right? Even if ethnic parties won 100% of all the electoral seats, they still will not get to choose their chief minister, because the president get to choose the chief minister, and only the winning party from the union level get to be the president. Then that's that. Now, even if somewhere, somehow, ethnic parties get to choose their ethnic, their own chief minister for their state, that still won't make much of a difference, because the state government do not have its own institutions, do not have its own minister. All these different government agencies, government mechanisms are the extensions of the union ministers and union government. That means the state government don't really have much to do, anything to begin with. On top of that, almost all the powers given to the states under the 2008 constitution, under the Schedule 2, require in accordance with union law. Everything has to be in accordance with union law. You get to do a lot of things, but still have to be in accordance with union law. That's also a whole level of restrictions. To make it even worse, there's no financial autonomy for the states, for the state level government. Almost the majority of the budget comes from the union budget. That means even if they have all the power, they have their own mechanism, they have all the things that I have mentioned previously, without the financial power, financial autonomy, they still will not be able to make much of a difference. We still have to go through the union government. For this reason, these two ethnic parties have not been able to make much of a difference. But then, if we look at the NLD government occupying 69% of the seats in the parliament, not making much of a difference anyway, it's very small room for improvement at all. In addition to that, we also have to keep in mind that there's this whole 25% military in all parliaments, state level, union level, and all of these things. Basically, No, they have not been able to make any difference, legislatively speaking. But of course, there are many things that they have been doing for the past 5 years in terms of figuring out a way to strengthen their political parties' institutions, to increase awareness about what's going on with the country, playing some key role in the peace building, peace negotiation process, and all of these things, which they have been trying to do, but not much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I mean, so you do paint a pretty gloomy picture. And of course, the system has obvious flaws. But I think it's still interesting there was a Salween Institute report released a couple of months ago, or earlier this summer, where you looked at, the reasons why ethnic political parties performed poorly in the last election, and then you suggested strategies that they can adopt in order to get more votes in the coming election or incoming elections. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about those conclusions. And I think in a way, so despite all this gloominess and the fact that the system is the way it is, there is still some room for maneuvering within the system as it stands. I think that's what you got at in your report. So could you explain a little bit about those conclusions or recommendations that you highlighted?
Many people claim that ethnic political parties are not united. They are very divided. That's why they did not win the 2015 election. So we try to look at the data. The data that doesn't prove that claim. For example, we have 3-4 Chin parties, we have 2-3 Shan parties, and we have 4-5 Karen party and Chin parties. And even if we combine all the votes together, it's still not going to win election. They're still not going to win seats in the area where they compete in. So we wanted to know that, okay, if merging all these parties to become one will not really address the problem, then what's the problem? What is the problem? And Gosai earlier mentioned about how, people vote on ethnic line, identity base. Yes and no. They do look at the identity as in the person being a Shan, but they don't necessarily have problem with voting for parties that do not represent the ethnic parties. For example, in many ethnic areas, 2015 election, NLD won many of the seats. That means they couldn't have won it without votes from ethnic voters. If you really look at that, and they don't really necessarily have any problems voting for other parties. But then how do we make sure that this is beneficial to the ethnic groups? We come up with 3 different scenarios when we look at all these different ethnic parties nationwide. 3 scenarios. One is the ethnic group concentrate in the same area. You have very high concentration of one ethnic group in the same area, and with no possibility of vote split. Meaning, Shan living in a lot of Shan living in the same area, and then only one Shan party is competing. Then we have ethnic concentration, and we have no possibility of vote splitting. In that situation, we can go with, identity-based campaign strategies. I'm Shan, you're Shan, vote for me, trust me, because I can be trusted, because we're from the same ethnic group. But that kind of narrative will not work if you have the possibility of vote split. 2 Shan parties competing in the same constituency, and the voters are all Shan, and then the candidates are all Shan, and they represent Shan parties, and that's when you can no longer use the same narrative of I'm Shan, you're Shan, vote for me, I can be trusted. You have to come up with a slightly different campaign strategies to talk about it. The situation gets even worse if you are dispersed. Your people are not concentrated in the same area, they're dispersed in a larger area, and then you have the possibility of vote split. And you cannot talk about the locality problems anymore. You cannot talk about your own ethnic problems anymore. You're going to have to start thinking broader, policy-based, working class, social welfare, education, those things that are applicable to all sort of people. The problem is ethnic parties are not able to cope with the whole situations. Not only that they don't have any of those policy, many of them are barely managing to run their party smoothly and having any candidates to run for the election or any election at all. This is becoming a lot more obvious to us when we work with many of them. Sometimes when we work with them, we ask them like why there are two Chan parties and why there are two Karen parties, why don't you merge? They would say that we have policy differences. But when we actually really interrogate them, what are the policy differences? Many of them are not able to pinpoint what are the policy differences that they have, which part is irreconcilable. And that is not because they have policy differences. Most of the time, they don't even have a specific policy to even disagree on. This is the reality. So these are the findings. So for the first two scenarios, when I said, we have a high territorial concentration with low risk of vote splitting or high risk of vote splitting, the way to go through that is through mobilizing and persuasions, creation of sector-specific policy platform, and delivery of less exclusive campaign message. So that means if we in a situation where it is not enough to just gain one ethnic group vote, we have to make sure that we are persuading other non-Shan ethnic to vote for these political parties. And it's not enough to just say that we're going to bring development for Shan people. We're going to have to say we bring development for people living in this area. Those kind of situation. Just my final point, one last point. Most of the time, ethnic political parties, they are strong believer in self-determinations and ethnic equality and federalisms, but people cannot eat those. For the voters, every single day, what they have to worry is, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to make sure that my family is safe? How am I going to make sure that I do not get extorted by all different, arms groups? And how am I going to make sure that the crops that I grow get a good price during the harvest seasons? Those are their daily concern. How am I going to make sure that my parents, my old parents, are getting, a decent healthcare? When my children getting decent educations? These are the issues that people care about and people can understand and can comprehend. Ethnic equality and federalism, while they are very, very important for peace and stability in this country, they are not the immediate problems that people really care about. And ethnic political parties have not been able to tap onto this side of the story.
As we only have about 15 minutes left of this seminar, I would like to invite the audience to ask their questions. If you would like to ask a question, could you please use the chat function in Zoom? But while we wait for people to ask their questions, could we maybe go back to just quickly this election? Do you see any opportunities to change in relation to ethnic representation?
Just a quick comment on I just want to echo the last scenario Ying Lao just mentioned. Like, when you look at it, the demographic of the country, the constituency, we have a very few township constituency got concentrated in one ethnic or one ethnic, which is, very, very few. In Mon, there are maybe only 2 or 3 townships. In Shan, there are maybe 10 or 15 townships. But other than that, the mobility within the country is really, really high. So they have to come up with the broader issue-based strategy. So one interesting point, just mentioned is that. So when we asking what is the priority issue at your community level and at the country level. So we always got infrastructures, education, this kind of like basic issue they've been facing. So constitution is just 1%. Peace and conflict in state, we have like about 5 to 10%. In the regions, it's just 1%. So not only ethnic party, for the big party like NLD and USGB, they already got the mass, they are supporter there. But for the ethnic party, they have to merge this kind of daily, priority issue into their policy platform and policy promises. That will be a key. Why as an observer, why I promoting this I want to promote elections to be on the policy-based, program-based instead of the identity-based. That's why I'm promoting this issue. So whether we have kind of like a lot of the policy and an issue So I mean, like people where we get more informed choice.
Thanks. So we have our first question, and actually, you mentioned as an election observer, you have a certain perspective. Could I maybe ask you to reflect on Gary Klauka's question, which is, I used to work for a political party on political party development in Myanmar. The USDP and other political parties have for months been questioning the competency and legitimacy of the Union Election Commission. Is this a sign that they might be preparing not to accept the election results if they do not win?
This is a huge challenge for this coming election. In 2015, we got the same issue, but the previous election commissions tried to build trust between the election commissions and the political party. But for this election commissions, they try to isolate it from the media, from the political party, and from the civil society, which make the electoral process more vulnerable. So we are even concerned about the post-elections, instability.
Thanks. Perhaps you want to comment on that, Ying Lao, but otherwise you have a question directed at you.
Yes.
And there are people with different views, even within the same ethnicity, like some who don't vote for NLD, and some want to vote for its own ethnic party. I've seen there is some argument between the same ethnicity, vote for NLD or ethnic parties. What's your opinion on this?
I think it is the facts of democracy. Democracy promotes pluralism. It is for plural society, and this is a plural society. And I think it is normal to have all these different people wanting to vote for all these different parties, and there's nothing wrong with it. In addition to that, I also believe that political parties should be able to run for election in any area that they want. There shouldn't be any restrictions. If Shan parties is not good enough at campaigning and not earning any votes from any Shan people, I don't think it's anything wrong with NLD. I think it's something wrong with Shan parties. They're not doing good enough job to convince the people to vote for them. It's normal to have people wanting to vote for all sort of people. You have people who are interested in, even though it's very low percentage, wanting to vote for ethnic parties. You have ethnic people who are voting across the ethnic lines. These are all normal, and I see that as a good sign for democracy. However, if you actually go and ask why people vote for particular parties that they vote for, most of the time they don't really have thought out reasons why they vote for certain political parties. For example, if you go and ask NLD voters, I can guarantee you that majority of them will say that they vote for NLD because Mother Su is the leader of that party. That's it. Nothing more than that. It's not because they have very good education policy, not because they have very good ethnic policy or economic policy, or they bring any specific change to the country. And that same principle apply to many other ethnic parties as well. I vote for these ethnic parties because this is my ethnic group and because I like the leader. Most of the time, it's not because of the policy base. But if we really want democracy to take root in this country, what we really need to do is we really need to start promoting or encouraging political parties to start adopting policy and start thinking about, the political ideologies and programmatic policies. That's how we will be able to move beyond the current situations.
Thank you. So, the questions are pouring in. There's a question from Samuel Monk, which is about the local government, so township level. Is it elected or selected? Will there be an election for the township level government in this election or in the future, I suppose? And then maybe a third question to try to wrap up. It's this Paul Riester, a PhD candidate researching Myanmar's transition and ethnic minority rights. Are there differences between ethnic groups in terms of their engagement with the political party system? Why do some groups have well-developed parties, for example, Shan, Rakhine, while others, for example, Karen, do not? Maybe we could start with those questions.
So definitely we have so far at the municipal elections in the municipal, the Yangon municipal and then the Mandalay municipal election. It is the local election, and then we also have the local elections at the ward and village tract administrator. Other than that, majority of the administrators are appointed by the government. So that's the thing. So for the ethnic people, ethnic engagement to the political system, you have any?
What was the point?
I suppose a question for you, Ying Lao, would be this one from Paul, whether, is there a difference between the different ethnic groups? Why do some seem to have a strong interaction with the political party, and they have quite, like Rakhine and Shan, and while others, the Karen, have very little political representation?
I think combinations of reasons. Myanmar has been, since the colonial time, divide and rule has always worked in any situation. Burma is not unique in that sense. So the authorities always use this divide and rule strategies to divide between all these different ethnic groups, all these like-minded people, and it has always worked and it will always work. So the reason why I'm talking about this divide and rule situation is, if you want to compete with a Shan party, and you cannot really do it directly. What you do is you build up another Shan parties to compete with the existing Shan party. That's applied to every ethnic group. When even if we have 4 or 5 different Kachin party, it is most likely that some of the Kachin parties are not necessarily real Kachin party. They are more like a proxy of a certain a more powerful parties in the country. And if and when they win the election and they win the seats, have the seats in the parliament, they are more likely to vote in line with the proxy. This go back to my point that I make in the beginning. Some of the ethnic parties announced their divorce from USDP. You wouldn't really need to announce your divorce if you have not been married to that party before. I think that's one of the main reasons. So they exist only to be used as a tools for other bigger political parties. This is why it is there's no strong enough reasons to build a strong institution, anything like that. With that being said, okay, what if some parties who are not proxy of the larger party, they really exist for the people, and they are genuinely trying very hard to represent the voice of the people and the community that they operate in, but still yet they have not been able to build the political party institutions. That is because the lack of resource, lack of technical expertise, and consistent support. I think this applies this is geared toward international donors. I'm about to say something very critical about donors. So my apologies. This is not representing of SPC or anything like that. It's my own opinion. The international donors only interested in supporting political parties right before the elections. So right after the election, everybody disappeared. But building a political parties and building a democratic society, it takes more than just a one-time training. It takes time, and it has to be consistent, it has to be long-term, and it has to be strategic. And on top of that, most of the international aid organizations that are helping political parties always want to claim that they are supporting multi-parties. That means every time they have any trainings, any event, any support, they try to get as much political parties as possible. That means if they have a 50 people trainings, they try to invite 50 parties, one from each party. This one person from this party coming to attend your training for 3 days cannot go back and build a strong political parties institution. You cannot hope that, and it never work, it will never work, and it have never worked in any place. That's not unique to Myanmar. That means if we really, really want to build political party institutions and we want to see ethnic parties being able to build their party institutions stronger, we're going to have to be strategic, and we're going to have to be targeted, and have to be consistent, and have to have a long-term plan. It's not a one-time thing. You have to have a long-term plan. You have to have a specific plan and specific parties and specific people. You need a critical mass. We will need a critical mass in any political parties to impact any change. And we have a lot of room to do that, to create that kind of influence and that kind of environment in the ethnic parties or in the smaller parties, because because they are smaller, and then because they are not, have not been very institutionalized, whatever tradition or culture, organizational culture they have. So it is easier to impact change, and you will be able to make an impact. These are all the reasons why ethnic political parties have not been able to build their political party institution stronger. Now, does that mean NLD and USDP, the two largest national level parties, have a really, really strong political party institutions? That's a whole different story. The short answer is yes and no.
Okay, thank you. So actually, we have a lot of interesting questions, but I'm afraid we will not have time, unfortunately, at this seminar to go through them all, about the role of China's influence, the fact that some ethnic parties seem to be switching towards geographic identity rather than ethnic identity per se, for example, in Shan State, and all these questions. I mean, and we also have a question about the importance of the ethnic parties. Maybe if I could ask you to wrap up very briefly with this question, I mean, so that we end perhaps on a slightly positive note, despite all the challenges. If we could give some important highlights about why ethnic parties are important despite limited capacity and other limitations in terms of resources, for people's vision for a federal democratic Burma. If I could ask both of you to just give a brief final comment on that note.
Definitely, I mean, the building a political party is a long-term process. I don't think so we can achieve within this two election cycle. I mean, like, if we are thinking about 2010, it's different election cycle. So we just started 2015, much more open, much more competitive, and 2020 is becoming more and more competitive. So I think that there are also a positive trends. You can see that. So in 2015, even though, I mean, I just said in the beginning, it's like, even though majority of the ethnic parties support the major party like NLD, because they need to get the different governments, they need to I mean, like, have a different governments in 2015. So they don't really, I mean, like, focusing on the party building for themselves. But I mean, after that, they already realized that. So I mean, like, we are going to have the democratic system in the future. So one of the key the fundamental requirement is that we do have a stronger party institution. So you can see that there are more political parties merging into one. That's the point of the institutional behavior, isn't it? I mean, so I think that the only thing is that we need to be creating an opportunity for these kind of space for political party to grow in the future. Otherwise, I mean, like, so that's something important for me, not only for the international community, but also for the domestic group who's supporting political parties. So I think there are also positive trends. So we need to just pushing this, creating this space more open, and then creating more space for political party to grow in the future. That's my last comment on this in this panel. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. And can I, Ying Lao, you have maximum 1 minute to give a final comment, and then we have to wrap this up.
I'm sorry, I talked too long. Okay, so just very short, I think I've already covered this one. Democratically speaking, we need the kind of parliament that is representative of demographic. So we have all these different, we have very diverse country. That means this diversity should be reflected in our parliaments, in our decision-making bodies. If not, then democracy is not there. And the voices of the people are not being represented in the area, in the decision-making bodies. And on top of that, like I said, the federalism and self-determinations is extremely important for democracy to take root. Without a certain level of political stability, the democracy will not be able to take root. With that being said, it is really important that ethnic parties or ethnic people do not feel that they are permanent losers. We need to have the kind of political systems, political culture that give them some sense of possibility of improving their own situations and their right to self-determination and all this. Otherwise, why would anyone want to vote, want to compete in the election? Why not just hold arms and continue to fight for your rights? That's how it's going to go. So for this reason, I think the role of ethnic political parties are very, very important. But I'd like to address Ben's questions, the last questions in the chat. That's a very, very short one.
Hi everyone, I'm just jumping in here because Ying Lao answers a question that was in the chat that our moderator Alexander did not get a chance to read out. So I'll read it out now. Question from Ben Dunant, Managing Editor at Frontier Magazine. Platforms of ethnic-based federalism are inherently controversial in states with substantial internal diversity, such as Kachin State and Shan State. The SNLD seem to be responding to this by presenting themselves as a state-based rather than ethnic-based party, seeking a mandate for all ethnic groups in Shan State. Does this shift point towards a more progressive, less contentious, and more politically viable future for ethnic parties?
SNLD has transformed itself from the ethnic-based party into a state-based party. But once they have transformed themselves into a state-based party, they also run into different problems. So if they claim to be a Shan state-based party, and that means they don't necessarily have any claim in competing in Kachin State or Mandalay region or Sakai region or Kyaw State. For that reason, instead of calling themselves as an ethnic-based or state-based, they are starting to present themselves as territorial-based and policy-based parties. So if you look at them, recently they have released a party policy platform. Unfortunately, it is only in Burmese, but I think the table of content are also in English, so you can study their policy platform. It is very different. This is like I think the only party that have released a party policy platform during this 2020 election. Almost all other parties only released the election manifestos. So they're slightly different. And if you study them, you will see that SNLD does not really only represent the Shan people or the Shan state. It represents the whole country. It is talking about the country. It is talking about the peace process. It is talking about addressing the root cause of the civil war in our country. And it has the solutions, possible solutions to end civil war and bring peace for this country. So that's a question for Ben.
Thanks, Ying Lao. Then Ben got his answer as well. We're over time, but thank you so much. A big thank you to our panelists who've shared their expert opinions today with us. And thank you also to all of our participants in this seminar. It's great to see people joining from literally across the world for a seminar on ethnic representation in Burma. And it shows that I think there's great interest in the upcoming election. So whether it will be postponed or not, we'll see, I suppose. But we'll keep on monitoring and hopefully we'll stay in touch with you guys and also the participants. So with that said, I think we will conclude today's seminar. So thank you so much, everyone who's joined, and see you next time.
See you. Thank you.